Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Marc de Supervielle, and I'm very happy to be with you this morning for this session. Welcome to all participants, wherever you are. I'm sure we'll have a good and richful time exchanging on our discussion topic today. We will try to have a look and exchange on the protections, the best protection for 2021-22, and how to defend our IT systems. I'm very happy to have distinguished panelists with me this morning. We have Maxime Oliva, who is a CEO at Techid, and we have Annie Sarkar, Group CISO at Biocon Limited. Thank you very much to be here, guys. I'm very happy to be the host. I'm humbled. Maxime is a CEO at Techid, as I mentioned. He's the owner of a digital risk and security firm. He has a unique expertise in legal, cybersecurity, and business operation, and he's specialized in advising customers on the underlying risk of operating in growing digital society. So Maxime is based in China, and he will give us his insight on the best protections and how he sees the trends of this of the market for the next months to come. We have Annie with me. Annie is a seasoned CISO. He has been on different ISO boards, and is currently a biopharma CISO. So he's exposed to international issues with regard to information security, and his business also will provide us a unique view as he deals with the research, manufacturing, supplies, and sales. And he will also tell us about his ISS, his unique ISS requirements of his industry. We should have also Johan coming in the coming minutes. But before, I'd like to just introduce the topic about the protections and what we could do as CISO professional to do our job in a better way. And the threats are numerous, and among them, I could definitely mention the remote working, which has had some complexity to our functions lately. I could also mention the expanding Internet of Things that have also given us a lot of worries on the perimeter to secure. And maybe one, if I had to mention a third risk, one of the third risks I should mention is, of course, the rise of ransomware. The rise maybe is not the correct word, but the ransomware that is still and continues to be a major threat. So I'm going to turn right now to Maxime to have him, explain a little bit about his stand about cybersecurity now and for the coming months. So Maxime, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark. And very pleased to be here with you, with Annie as well. I think before going into the details, since Johan is not here, I'm just going to put a bit of context before moving to my part. I think in terms of risks, when we mention about companies doing operations in the cyberspace, the risks are not new. So you mentioned ransomware, you mentioned a lot of different type of attacks, but there is plenty, like man in the middles and so on. There is nothing new. I think that the new things, if we may say, are more related to the tips of the scale of those attacks. More complex, more large, more frequent, touching more stakeholders in the cyberspace, including organizations, but also including individuals. And individuals are working for companies, so this is still a risk for organization. So So I think this part I will let Johan and Annie elaborate on it. Today, I wanted to discuss about a new type of risk, in my opinion. What is a new type of risk, which for sure is not perceived as a risk, but is definitely one. It's about compliance. What we have seen in the past years, but it's tremendously increasing in 2021, and it's going to continue to rise in the coming years, is what we called at TechID cyber sovereignty. We had a first brick of this with the GDPR in Europe, but we also have similar behaviors from different organizations, the different countries, sorry, managing their organization in a cyber sovereignty approach. So of course, China is one, but we also have Vietnam, we also have to some extent Hong Kong, but we also have Malaysia. India is not in rest in terms of cybersecurity regulations as well. Either it's in drafting or in a promulgated state of regulatory environments. But we have Singapore, we have Japan, so all Asia is basically growing fast on those aspects, without, of course, forgetting US, which is not at the forefront of the regulations, I would say, but have a very much more dramatic stance when we talk about cyber sovereignty, which can be quite challenging for businesses. So now that being said, what is a problem? How it becomes a risk for a company to have this compliance matter to handle? I think making a bit of history of internet, we had localized systems for the very early stages of the information technology industry, and then when we start to move to the cloud, I would say even at very, very early stages of the cloud, we started to adopt what we call a centralized system. So basically one system centralized in one point to provide services to all branches of an organization across the world, for example. So basically we did not have borders. And as far as internet has been created, there always have been borders, but not borders in terms of, I would say, data traffic, but more related to content for political purposes. Now what we are seeing in this new cyber sovereignty approach is that not only the content is still highly regulated, but the data localization, but also the infrastructure, also the technologies, and the, I would say, security governance of such organization systems. And this is becoming a very big challenge for organization. And what is very, where the risk lies in how organization actually handle those challenges. So I think that now that the context is set, we can move to the risks. The first risk, of course, when we talk about compliance, is a failure to comply. And when we talk about cybersecurity risks, people in their mind always have virus, ransomware, and this type of risk in mind, which is correct, which is true. But a risk in its very, very old definition is not only about a technological risk. So failure to comply is a risk, because then you could get fines, sanctions. In some countries, sanctions can be very heavy financially wise. So when we talk about the GDPR, for instance, it can be up to 5% of the turnover of the company, which can be huge. But when we talk about China, it can be also up to 50 million RMB, which is roughly, I would say, 6 million USD, and up also to 5 or 7% of the turnover of the organization. So we start to see this type of regulations. That's a risk, that's a big risk. And in some countries, we even have business suspension or even business license withdrawal, which means you can be then forbidden to perform your activity, which is an even greater risk, especially, I would say, in closed markets like China, Vietnam, Malaysia, and so on, where I would say information technology activities are restricted under certain circumstances, depending on certain businesses that you are conducting. So yeah, failure to comply is definitely a risk. And when we talk about compliance, we talk about loss of competitive edge. This Annie will be absolutely capable to elaborate on that. But for example, why does organization pass ISO 27001 certification? It's because that gives them a competitive edge, because when an organization is facing two potential suppliers and one can demonstrate that the business they will be entrusted with will be secured, then it is a competitive edge. So failure to comply is a loss of competitive edge. Loss of competitive edge is a risk to lose business. So it's also a risk that cannot be ignored. The last one, and this is frankly speaking something we see more and more, it already existed in the past, and I will give some example, but it's very, very relevant, is deletion. What we see is competitors knowing from inside man, or because they manage their own, I would say, external investigation on the competitors, know that a company failed to comply with the regulation. Actually, it is super easy from a consulting firm like us, but also for every person which has a bit of technical background to understand how a company can not be compliant with a regulation. Like for example, the GDPR, you can launch some scanning tools on their infrastructure, and then you can detect where are the database of the European citizens, and then you can detect it's outside of Europe. So you have already a first element that demonstrates that they are not in compliance with the GDPR. Same goes for a lot of different things. And then what we see, and this is a risk of deletion, is that we see competitors actually reporting their competitors. And that is a very, very important thing. That means they do something absolutely legal, but then again, coming back to the competitive edge, there is two ways. When you have a competitive edge, there is two ways. Either you have a compliance and you gain some advantage. The other way is to say the other competitor is not compliant, so I'm going to push him down. And then you create the gap of the competitive edge. And this is a serious risk. Specifically, when we talk about data laws, since data laws 99% of the time includes notions like privacy policies, terms and conditions, and so on, and 99% of the time, those policies must be public on your website, on your application, and etc. So it's super easy for competitors to actually verify your privacy policies. Are they up to date or not? One simple element. I go to your website, I don't find your privacy policy, then that means you are not compliant, because you should clearly display those privacy policy to your users. So it is very easy for competitors to actually have a quick comprehension of the compliance of a competitor. The last part of, not the last part, but one of the other part of is the enforcement of those regulations, which also represent a risk. You are not compliant. Sure, that's a risk. There is another risk, is that now more and more in the new regulations that are coming out, what we see is that the actual accountability of organization to be compliant, meaning that in the past, let me take a quick image to illustrate my discussion. Imagine that your apartment got break-in, and then you report that you had been stolen in your apartment. You had a burglar in your apartment, and then the police will come, file a complaint, and make an investigation. End of the story. Now we see cyber security regulations and data protection regulations. When you report a crime, they will ask you, why were you not compliant? Because if you would have been compliant, this would not have happened. And then you start to be a suspect because you were not compliant in the first place. So you change from a victim stand to an actual criminal stance, because then you were not compliant in the first place. This is a risk, because that means what we advise to our customers when they have this type of situation, so basically cyber breach, we tell them that you will be 3 times a victim. You will be a victim in front of the authorities because you were not compliant. You, of course, have been a victim in front of the criminals, the culprits, because then you have been stolen potential data or business disruption and so on. And you will be a victim a third time because then you will need companies to help you manage the crisis and rebuild the infrastructure and etc. So we are not talking like the old way time where you have an attack, you can resolve things by yourself and move on. What we see also, by the way, which is a very, very important point, is that now most of the regulations mandates organization to report such breach. So basically, if you have a breach, you, by law, you don't have actually the luxury to say, okay, we could have some problems with the regulation, so I'm just going to cover it under the carpet and not talk to the authorities. You can definitely do that, but then that would not be lawful, which to some extent sometimes may be a good decision for companies, but that's another discussion. And the last part, the last risk that you face with compliance is the very dramatically increasing requirements that it requires. So now we have regulations governing the cyberspace, and you not only need to have a CIO and a CISO, Chief Information Security Officer background to understand those regulations, you also need a legal background. And you need to merge all this into one profile, very high expertise. It's very challenging for organization. And what we see from our customers, it's a risk. Why? Because usually they don't have those high profiles internally. So they manage this in, I would say, few possibilities, either in silo. So legal team will do their analysis and IT team, to simplify, will do their analysis, end of the story. Either they try to bridge it, but actually when they bridge this, they need a common language, and this common language is very difficult to have. So basically what they are going to do is they are going to reduce the scope, because they will try to simplify it to the basic essence of the compliance regulation, which obviously does not cover the whole risk of not being compliant. That's a very, very big challenge, like to have the right competencies at the right place. I think this is one of the major challenges. So basically, I've already listed like 5 risks related to the compliance, which I understand is not like, we're not talking about code, virus, and cool stuff like this, but those are real risks. And I would say those are maybe even higher risk than virus, because they are actually risks coming from governments, because governments are enforcing the law. And this is definitely something that organizations will need to tackle, not only in 2021, but I would say along 2022 until never-ending, because this is basically a never-ending journey. Compliance is a never-ending journey. So yeah, that's basically my my insight for 2022. Yeah, I spoke a lot of concepts in a very short time, but I think it's.
Thank you. Thank you, Maxime. I think it was very refreshing, and we'll start a conversation on that, on the compliance, because I have also some ideas on the topic, but it was very enlightening. Now I'm turning to Annie. Annie, please, you have the floor for the next 10, 12 minutes. Please share some of your concerns and some of your matters of enthusiasm about cybersecurity and in the coming months.
Hi. So first of all, thank you for having me. And I want to make something very clear. The views that I represent, I talk about here, are absolutely mine. I'm not representing my company. So coming to the point that you made, I sort of agree with Maxime on the fact that compliance continues to be on the forefront of what we do. But there are a few other things that I believe are going to happen going forward. The first thing that we are going to see probably is the evolution of working from anywhere. I mean, it is not a new concept, but the new concept is going to be a hybrid workplace. You're going to find out that some people are essentially needed to be in office for those enterprises who need to move things, get things done physically. Those people must go to office. Office will probably become a hazardous area to work with. Some enterprises are already talking about providing hazard pay for people who come to office. And then there'll be a large contingent of people who are going to be remote. We are already remote. We've seen that happening after the pandemic or during the pandemic. And a lot of new business models have come. And all these, they pose a huge risk to enterprises because if they don't consider cybersecurity, because at the end of the day, many organizations are realizing now, cybersecurity or cyber resilience is not an IT risk or a technology risk, it's a business risk. And there are multiple examples of that in the past, and I'm sure there are going to be a few more in the future. One of the things that is going to evolve is that there are going to probably more cyber physical attacks, which means the attack is going to use the cyberspace as a medium, but the effect is going to be physically felt. And that is going to create a much larger impact on enterprises. Imagine that if the retail industry had shipments locked up because the computing systems that we depend on so much for logistics are not available. And that means that it could even affect the basic grocery distribution in many parts of the world, creating a crisis that is not really an IT problem. It's a business problem. It could be a societal problem. It could be a community problem. So that's one possibility. The second thing is that as we go ahead, there will be newer and newer mechanisms that we will discover. And as hackers are increasingly focusing on easier ways to attack us, there are going to be newer threats that are going to come up. So until recently, we had seen ransomware was a different threat, like you said, Mark, from what phishing was. But now they've joined hands. And there is something called as ransomware as a service, which means there's someone who's willing to rent out their ransomware platform so that they can make money and the attacker can make money. And in the end, the victim is in a very dicey situation. One of the questions that enterprises are continuously going to face, and this is going to come also from compliance, and that is, what do we do when we face a ransomware? Do we pay the ransom, yes or no? And I think that is not a new question, but that because there have been kidnappings in the past, but kidnappings have been rare and it's difficult to do, but ransomware is probably easier than a kidnapping to earn money, right? So that's a question that enterprises will dabble with. Some will find solutions like the Colonial Pipeline situation in the US, right? They had to pay ransom and only then they were able to restart their operations because the ransomware attack actually hit gas supply. So that's what we are going to see more and more. Now that means that enterprises and leaders at all levels, and what is surprising is that I was reading a report yesterday that everybody has now more or less reconciled to the fact that the cyber attack is not really an IT issue, it's a business issue. But yet businesses are not gearing up to treat it as a business issue and to address it as such. And in order to do that, they need to take cognizance of the fact that the newer technology adoption is a business prerogative, right? You want to do things better at a lower cost and reach your customers faster. And in order to do that, you are increasingly going to invest in technology. If you look at how enterprises are coming back into business, the investments into technology are simply going up, which is good news. But this is a moment. I think in 2021, 22, we are going to see more and more enterprises who are going to build cybersecurity in the beginning, bolt-on security, so to say, right? So if you are going into, increasing your manufacturing capacity by introducing some kind of IT systems, you're going to talk to the security guy in the beginning and say, okay, tell me, what do I do? How do I make sure that I've covered all the bases? And there lies the difficulty. There is no easy way to do that because At the end of the day, the hackers need to be right only once. You need to be right every time to protect. The last point that I want to make is that new technology, as it evolves, is not so much of a problem when it comes to cybersecurity, because in any case, you're going to assess everything in the beginning, because newer and newer technology is probably going to build in some security controls from the beginning, right? Whether it is the proliferation of 5G, right? 5G means that you can now make faster, short distance communications happen. So the risks of 5G is something that enterprises will need to consider from the beginning. But there are other things that are evolving. Think about the fact that the proliferation of the cloud. So if cloud comes to your enterprise, if you're moving into cloud, there are the model of using cloud as an easy way out is something that enterprises will have to think twice, because cloud has a lot of confusion. And that confusion stems from the fact that part of the things are done on the cloud and part of it are done by the enterprise. So there is something called as shared security responsibility model, which people will need to understand. And unless that is understood, adopting cloud services is going to be so difficult. In the end, I would like to contribute to what Maxime said earlier and what you said too, and that is, as we go ahead, older threats are only going to become faster, bigger, and larger in size. But the biggest issue that every cybersecurity professional must deal with is that the amount of uncertainty is only going to increase. And in my view, uncertainty is the only part that you can control and reduce. Solutions are available. There are people who can give you answers. But the main thing that you can't decide is the uncertainty. Look at how risk is looked at by enterprises. You go and tell somebody, this is a problem. A new regulation is coming. The risks are, the penalties are higher. What do you want to do? Now, there lies the uncertainty. And that is when all the 5 risks that Maxime talked about, once you take that to the leadership, the question is, do we do something about it? Or do we not do anything about it? Or do we do something about part of it and then do something else later? These are how you handle uncertainty. The job of a CISO then is to make sure that there's enough information to reduce the uncertainty to manageable levels. It's not easy. I can only say it, but let me tell you, it's very, very difficult.
Thank you very much, Annie. That's a very interesting. And, from your 2 little speech, Maxime and Annie, I've seen at least one interesting topic I'd like to dig on. And Maxime, I will start with you. And I fully agree when you say that cybersecurity can give a competitive edge. And I think Annie was telling in essence the same thing, that information security should be seen as a business enabler and should not be limited to a technology aspect. But to you, Maxime, with regard to the cybersecurity as a competitive edge, where should I start when I assess the risk of compliance? I mean, just if you can give us some tips, because I've understood the importance and of the task of and the everlasting task of being compliant. So can you give us some hints on where to start, or some tips, what to do, what not to do, maybe, Maxime?
All right. I think it's quite related to the last part of what Annie just said. Instead of me, I call that the risk appetite of companies. So basically, each company has different risk appetites, and even within a company, each different roles involved in that organization has different level of risk appetite. Never talk risk appetite with the lawyers; they will have 0 to none. But then when we talk to CEO and finance manager and so on, they have a risk appetite. So somehow a decision must come from at some point from the organization itself and not from individuals. But it's very important to understand who you are talking to because this will be key to find a suitable solution. And then that go back to what Annie said, it's difficult. And as a CISO, you can share as much information as possible related to those risks. But at the end, managing the appetite of everyone to come to a global decision is a different thing. Why I say that is because let's talk about the marketing, for example. Marketing, from my experience, is one of the departments which has the highest risk appetite, because basically they want just data, a load of data, and they just want to do crazy stuff with that. Like imagine we are capable to predict when the guy goes in front of his house that he wants a chocolate bar, and we can display an advertisement on the panel. I mean, they have crazy ideas. They are marketing people. They are paid to that, but basically they don't really mind the risks. So you have different expectations in every organization. And I think to gain a competitive edge about cybersecurity, you should really understand your business from a cybersecurity perspective, how cybersecurity is relevant to your business. We can just have some quick example. Let's say we are talking about a manufacturing, okay? Manufacturing, basically, they don't really mind about their public image, because they have very limited exposure to consumers, very few data of citizens or personal data, and so on. However, they are very concerned about business disruption, like a production line being stopped. That is quite dramatic. So I believe the risk appetite would be kind of balanced on some aspects. And then where is the competitive edge of cybersecurity for manufacturing? Actually, not so much, because these factories, they already have engagement in terms of how many they should produce to their suppliers on a monthly basis. And actually, the customers does not care so much about how you do it. It's just you have to do that. Because when we talk about a manufacturing, for instance, cybersecurity is a very critical piece, but there is an even way more risky part, which is a supply chain management. For factories, that is key, because there is a lot of third parties and etc. So basically, you have to balance that. Now, if we talk about advertising company, as I mentioned, they have crazy ideas, but the risk appetite can be high, but this will be very, very quickly handled by their customers, because their customers will say, I entrust you with my customer data to make advertisement. I have to be 100% sure that this is secured and it's not going to end up in one of my competitor brackets. So probably the advertising company will say, it's okay, but actually the sales of that advertising company could say, this is a question, every prospect they ask us, we need to be 100%, this is a competitive edge. So coming back again to what Annie said, it's a mix of the risk appetite and the first thing Annie said about the business itself. And security is not just a technical problem, it is deeply integrated into the business, and how security can enable the business is very important. So yeah, first you need to assess your risk appetite, surely at each department level, but you need to come up with a organization level answer. And then only after you can really leverage this as a competitive edge, because you will know exactly what are the pain points of your customers and how cybersecurity can help them being relieved from those pain points. And the pain points will vary greatly depending on the business you are actually working in.
Thank you, Maxime. I think that's we understand a bit better about the risk-based approach, and I could not agree more with you, being an IT auditor. And I think being aware of the risk and the culture of the company is probably how to say, very interesting, and makes your cybersecurity policies and approach probably more adequate and more relevant to the business you are dealing with. And with in relation to that, and what Annie has told us a little bit before, that cybersecurity should not seen only as a technical or technology issue. I'd like to have his stand on his views on how to connect to leaders and how to convince them about the importance of cybersecurity?
So there is no easy way. There is no easy way because, you know, individually, we are excellent risk managers. It is only when we stand and do our jobs is when we are driven by what needs to be done is how we ignore risk. So think about this. You're leaving home and for some reason you find that the door's not closing very well, right? The situation keeps changing depending on whether you live in an independent house or you live in an apartment complex, but it all points down to the fact that you will take a decision to protect your house until you reach a point where you are moderately sure that your house will be protected even if the door is not closing completely as you go to office for some very important work. Now this, as an individual, everyone is very good at. But when it comes to an organization, as Max said, the point is that if you're in marketing, you are focused on getting that job done, and then you tend to ignore the other kind of risk. And when you connect to leaders, you see the same thing. You see a variety of leaders who keep changing their attitude towards cybersecurity as they go about facing what they do. Now, think about someone who has faced an issue with cybersecurity in the past. Now, there are two kinds of leaders there. Some who are pragmatic, who would say that, yes, I know, I have seen this in the past, and I think let's start from the beginning. That's one kind of leaders. Good to have such leaders. But most of the others are something different because they feel that cybersecurity is a nuisance. So when they encounter a cybersecurity issue, they will come back to you and they will tell you, I want this issue to go away. And that is never that easy. It doesn't go away. So one, there is continuous awareness, which you have to do. You have to go back to them, engage with them on a business process. I will tell you how 27001 itself differs from what it was before the pandemic and what it is after the pandemic. There's a particular clause in 27001, clause 6.2, which talks about security objectives. The requirement of the standard is that you need to have security objectives across relevant functions and levels. Until now, not many organizations had taken that seriously. They would have a security objectives documented, and that would probably be at a very high level. Now I see enterprises talking about doing that at a functional level, connecting with leaders and telling them that you define your security objectives, treat your IT and cybersecurity function as an enabler, and make sure you're able to cover your risks. You know, Maxime talked about risk appetite. So which means every leader has a risk appetite. If you're able to address that risk appetite, you're probably going to connect better. But some of the things that I found that are very important to note. One, in today's world, there are two kinds of organizations. Those who are migrating to the cloud way of working and those who are born in the cloud. Now, the situation of those who are born in the cloud is very, very different from those who are migrating, because those who are born in the cloud, for them, infrastructure security is a given. Right? For those who are not, those who are migrating are actually experiencing issues with cybersecurity when it comes to infrastructure level. Those who are born in the cloud, they're dealing with some other parameters. I was talking to a team, and you know, in my role as an evangelist, I keep talking to many startups as well. So I was talking to a team whose business is to connect. When you click, you get that ad word, right? So when you click on an advertisement, that's their business. So they make money from advertisements online. And look at the security challenges they face. The security challenge that they face is at that instant when someone clicks, there is a whole lot of thing that is going on behind the browser for you to go and see an advertisement or not see an advertisement. Now, that entire business is a technology business and it's born in the cloud. But their security challenges are not to do with perimeter security or all those things. They are worried about ransomware because it could hit them. They're worried about compliance. They're worried about a whole lot of things. but it's not infrastructure security. But look at other organizations, larger organizations who have been implementing, security programs or going through what we call as today's digital transformation, getting on to working with the cyberspace. Now, as you move from earlier models into the newer models, you realize it is not that easy. And that is where the second thing that I'm going to propose comes in. You need to have war games. You need to have the leaders experience what could really go wrong if there were to be a cyber attack. So of course, there needs to be a cyber crisis management program, and you need to have a cyber crisis teams, but you also need to have a cyber crisis council at a leadership level. And that leadership level needs to experience what would really happen should something go wrong. And, in my experience, it's always a revelation. Until that cyber crisis war game happens, everybody was thinking, oh, it's an IT issue. I will ask the CIO to look at it. But when you tell them that if this happens, your client is actually going to be very upset. Your regulators are going to be very upset. From the time that you got attacked to the time that you recover is typically a 30 to 90-day program. And it's not like you got attacked, you recover tomorrow. It doesn't happen exactly like that. And these are industry times. And when I say 30 to 90 days, I'm not talking about recovering critical systems. I'm talking about recovering the entire business. Yes, you might recover critical systems in 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, or whatever that you've planned for. But the reality is, to really come back to business, it takes time. And today's hackers, they're very smart. They don't attack you when you are at your peak load, with your peak power and peak performance, and everything is going good for you. They attack you when you're going on a holiday. Typical dates of attack. Look at this year. 24th is a Friday. Trust me as I say this, I will be very worried on the 24th of December, because the week after, there will be people who will go on holidays. And probably another 2 weeks, critical resources might not be available even from the partners, because it's not only the organization that is going on a holiday. It is entirely possible that if your database is managed by your supplier, your partner from Oracle or from SAP or whoever, and that guy goes on a vacation and you get attacked and you need his service, he's not available because he's sitting in some nice island in Greece or wherever, right? So the point that I'm trying to make is attackers target big attacks based upon the time. So when you are on the 24th, on a Friday evening, you get attacked. Between Saturday, Sunday, no one's there. Next entire week, no one is there. For you to recover your business is going to take much longer, because the longer you delay recovery, it actually increases substantially. The more you delay it, the longer it takes. So it's not a one-to-one relationship. If you delay it for 1 day, you don't have a delay of 1 day. If you delay it for 1 day, there could be, a recurring, there could be a delay that could go up to 5 days. So that's the reality. Connecting to leaders has never been easy. You can either show them by example, you can train them, but I found something very interesting recently. There are mechanisms by which you can determine the behavior of your workforce. And I'm not talking about behavior analytics. I'm talking about behavior resulted from your security tools, right? There are APIs that security tools have come up with now. And if you're able to build teachable moments from there, for example, if you find that a particular part of the organization tends to use the USB more at a particular time of the year, so you can send something like a teachable moment, a communication that says, this is the time not for you to not do this. So just an example. I can talk about teachable moments later, but I hope I answered you.
Thank you, Annie. It was very interesting, and I'd like to rebound to two things. What you said, that you have made a difference between companies that are moving to the cloud and the one that are cloud natives. I would tend to maybe to have less of a, let's say, less of a differentiating views on that, because to me, before the risks, and that came back to what Maxime said about the risk assessing the risks for me is having access to unauthorized data. That was a risk before, that is a risk today. And to me, but that's my personal view also, I tend to believe that it's not because you have moved to the cloud that this risk of unauthorized access to data or denial of service doesn't exist anymore. And I feel that my clients, there's a little bit of this sense that, okay, now the security is on the cloud. We do not, the security culture tends to evaporate. That's maybe one of my first comments, Annie, and I'd like to have your thought on that. But also, and the second topic is maybe about a wider one about how do you see, the technologies, the new technologies such as IA. We didn't talk about this one, artificial intelligence, helping us, our task of protecting the information assets of the companies. And I'd like maybe to start with Maxime about some thoughts on that.
All right. I just wanted to comment something that that I thought about when Annie started to reply something. There is some thoughts for food I would like to share with the participants. What I see a lot at our customer side on the organization level from the CIO, CISO teams, and etc., is that they are the one. They consider themselves technicians, and they are the one considering themselves technical. And basically why? I think because we, I would say engineers, ITs, and so on, we are kind of proud of what we do and to be technicians. But from my consultant life, I can say that everyone is technicians on their own aspects. A lawyer is a technician, a marketing is a technician, and we all don't directly, most of us, we don't directly serve the business. And there is education to be brought by the IT and security teams to the leaders and etc. But there is also, don't think that it's all on their shoulders. There is also some teaching that we must learn. We are a part of the organization. We are not technicians more than a lawyer of the company. And you have to change that mindset in your teams. And when I hear people calling the IT department technicians or saying stuff like, oh, this is just an IT problem. This actually kind of horrifies me because no, it's not. It's not just, it's a business problem. We go back to that. It's a question of mindset. And I think that everyone at any occasion on any level should remind them that the IT is not just the cleaning lady of the company. It's a real part of the business. And that shouldn't be, so sorry, this is something very important I wanted to share with the participants. Now, going back to your questions about new technology, I forgot a bit about the context of your question, but for me, everything related to new technology and more specifically when we talk about artificial intelligence, quantum computers, and so on, I see them as a huge enabler for organizations because what Annie kind of subliminally shared before is that we are always one step behind the hackers because they have the privilege to choose when, to choose where, to decide the dates, to decide of a lot of things. They just need one success where we need to be successful every time. So we are basically, we have a huge handicap with the hackers. But these technologies, which are today very complex, very costly, and so on, this is something that hackers organization, even though they are very, very well organized, will have difficulties to reach out to an organization level which can invest $1 million on a yearly basis on such technologies. So I see that as a possible tool. And I really say possible because so far I haven't seen anything that really made me confident on that, but it really could be a game changer in this war. And then when we talk about that, then it's mandatory. I have to explain, remind that there is different type of hackers. There is a type of hackers that an organization will never win. It's political hackers, which are funded or maintained by political organs. They have the funds, they have the knowledge, they have everything they need. This is useless to talk about them winning against them. We will never win against them. But I would rather say the other ones, the most classic ones, activists, hackers, Kiddy and so on. This is really a race I believe we could potentially win with such technologies.
Annie?
You are mute, Annie. You are on mute.
Sorry, I said, Mark, you asked two questions. The first one is whether the risks remain same, whether you are on cloud or otherwise. Theoretically, yes, they remain the same. But what happens on the cloud is that you take away a part of the computing requirements by, so let's say you're going for platform as a service, which means there's a service provider who's going to provide you the platform. So the risks related to the platform are taken on by the platform as a service organization. You talk about software as a service, which means everything below the software, the infrastructure, is not your concern. You're only bothered about using the software as a service. So if you are, as you said, born in the cloud, and your services are only software, you are assuming, or rather you are used to the cloud services provider taking care of all the other issues. So to your point, risks do remain the same because in my view, they have not changed much. But what does happen is you have changed your position from being the owner of all of it, the infrastructure, the connectivity and everything, to just focusing on the application. In November, I met, in the beginning of November, there was an event of Business Continuity Institute, where I had the honor of interviewing the Chief Resilience Officer of Netflix. So when we started building up for that discussion, you know, what would happen is I would keep, I come from an environment which is migrating to the cloud. He comes from an environment which is already on the cloud. So Netflix has already thought about something called as chaos engineering, which means if the Netflix application fails, if a data center fails in some part of the world, the Netflix application will not fall because it'll automatically switch over to somewhere else. And in order to practice that, what they would do is that they built a software that will shut down parts of that software at a random point in time. That's called chaos engineering. And that's how developers, anyway, different topic. The point that I was trying to make is that while the risks remain same, the pointer has moved, and therefore what an enterprise needs to address changes. So that's the first part of your answer. The second part of your question was about new and evolving technology, about artificial intelligence and about quantum computing, 5G and all that. In my view, cybersecurity will continue to be a challenge because each of these technologies bring in newer uncertainties. My personal view about AI, it is just a lot of hype as yet because AI needs a lot of data and a lot of accurate past data. And I'm using these two words very carefully because you need past data to come up with artificial intelligence models. You need accurate past data. There are not many who have past data. Forget about that past data being accurate. So AI is quite far off, but machine learning is definitely happening. There are machines which are learning, and there are a lot of value that we see that is happening. There are a lot of models that are being developed, and each of those models present both risks. The risk of the fact that it could be hacked because you have not thought about it, you have not protected the data, you have not protected the machine learning model, or that it could itself serve as a hacking engine. If you, as Maxime said, you know, the cyber attackers or the hackers are the ones who are probably leveraging more and more platforms that can do automatic attacks. So before machine learning, there was automation, right? So there is still automation happening. We are seeing every website you land up to, there is a bot, which tells you what you really want. And that's a good thing that's going to happen. You're going to see more and more software robots that are going to go and do a lot of work. Each of these software robots are going to go back to the earlier paradigm of how do we secure that. When you migrate from on-premises to on-cloud, a lot of things change. So there used to be a model where you would have a backbone, right, within various parts of the organization, and then you would have connection to the internet. That's changing. That whole backbone is moving to the cloud. All that you need is a connection into that backbone. There's a technology, there are technology solutions, as Gartner calls them as SASE, right? Secure Access Service Edge. Fantastic way of working. All that you need is a last mile. You just need to protect the last mile. Put everything else on the cloud. Your point of presence on the internet serves as your own private cloud. And then you can have your data centers connect to it. You can have cloud services connect to it. And then you can do wonders with that mechanism. Again, I beg to differ. Wonders is what we think now. You will discover that every new technology brings in a newer set of risks. And that's what I said in the beginning. I hope I answered your questions, Mark.
Yes, thank you very much. And I will finish by asking you, each of you, one quick question. And this is the one first to you, maybe Maxime. If you had one advice to give your client for 22, what would it be? One sentence, please. We need to finish this very interesting conversation.
That's a sentence to wrap up in one sentence. That's a very difficult job.
On cybersecurity.
I have a lot of advice. I cannot wrap up that on one sentence, but okay, one general sentence maybe then, but don't assume to know what you don't know, and start by the beginning every time of the journey, because otherwise you don't know what you don't know.
Great. And you, Annie, if you had one advice, maybe that you will tell your business leaders, what would it be?
I would say the very same thing that I said in the beginning. Cyber security risk is an enterprise risk. Get experts, get help before you begin investing into your newer technology platforms and the cybersecurity around it.
Thank you very much. I'm a bit frustrated because we could have started we could have continued this conversation. It was your perspective, both of you gentlemen, was very interesting. I want to thank Ralph Queiroz for organizing this event, this FICA event. I want also to thank the public here. Let me introduce the next panels. We have Pons Arun, a cyber defense evangelist who will lead APT, lessons learned after remediation for critical industry. And we have different panelists that will intervene. And this panel will start at 1:15 Korean time. Thank you again for this, for all of you, for this interesting session. And of course, you can reach Maxime, Annie, and myself through usual channel. I wish you good luck and have a great day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Annie. Bye-bye.
Bye.